Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Emily Marsh from the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce. I just want to kick things off with a few logistics for today's event. So we are recording the presentation today, and I will be sending it to everyone who registered for the event. And it will also be available on the Chamber website. I'll also, in that email to people who registered, share some links that the Chamber has to share with more resources that may be helpful during this time. If you have a question during today's event, we will have a Q&A session. So questions should be submitted through Zoom's Q&A portal. To access that, you're gonna either tap your screen or just move your mouse a little bit. You'll see a Q&A button pop up. You'll just click on that and simply type in your question. Those questions can be seen only by our presenters today, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. All right, thank you so much. I'm gonna pass it off to Tim Sink, Chamber President.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for this Zoom webinar. We are very excited to have Mayor Jim Boulay give us an update. I want to do a shout out to Charter Trust Company, who is sponsoring today's event. They've been terrific chamber members and supporters of the community and have sponsored past events that we have done with the city. So thank you, Charter Trust, and thank you, Mayor Boulay, for giving us this update today. Just by way of a brief introduction, Mayor Boulay has been a member of the City Council since 1998, and I believe he became mayor, and correct me if I'm wrong, mayor in 2008, and has been serving ever since. That is one of the mayor's jobs, is running the City of Concord, and his other day job is as a partner in the firm of Dennehy and Boulay here in Concord. So again, thank you, Mayor, and we look forward to your presentation.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you to the Chamber for setting this up today. Appreciate it. And my Zoom screen just changed all around, so I'm going to try to hopefully bring it back. It is great to go through some of the attendees. There's so many friends and community members here on the call. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen in. But what I want to do today was talk a little bit about what's going on in the city, kind of tell you a little pre-COVID-19 and then kind of where we're going. So you might remember last November we had an election, and I was really excited about our new council, which I still am. In the beginning of 2020, things were going great. Our newly elected council met at the beginning of this year, and we met to set for our priorities for the next 2 years. And of course, the thing we always talk about first is making sure we continue to balance our budgets for the fiscal year 21-22. We talked about our enhanced neighborhood paving programs. We were talking about the importance of our economic development opportunities to expand the tax base. And if you can all remember, we talked a lot about, we're still talking about the employment security building on South Main Street. I-93 reconstruction was probably one of the most, the hottest topics that going into the beginning of the year. The project out at exit 17 with the Rossios, the project down at exit 13, and some of the ways we're going to incorporate the river into that project. And of course, one of the biggest ones was the exit 14, which brought in a whole lot of things in terms of continuation of the Store Street over to Constitution Ave, Stickney Ave, and the relationship with the state and creating that economic opportunity over there. So things were really positive. We were really feeling it. We were really excited. There were a lot of other priorities around public safety and expanding our community events and the arts. So the list goes on. But as you all know, on Friday, March 13th, it feels like the world just kind of came to a screeching halt. It was that day, on that Friday, that Governor Sununu issued the executive order of 2020-04, declaring a state of emergency due to the COVID-19. And I have to tell you, you should all be very proud, and I am very proud as well, of how quick the city was to respond. In fact, that next day, that Saturday, we had a COVID-19 information page up on the city website. And by Monday, March 16th, the City Emergency Operations Center was activated. And that's located at our central station. On Tuesday, March 17th, our facilities were closed. to the public, and we began a transition to a virtual city hall. It was that model is with our staff working home wherever it was possible, and our residents have been encouraged to use the online applications, registrations, payments, etc. So to give you an idea of some of the examples, we've been conducting our meetings using with the public, that is, with via the virtual meeting platforms like this. If you ever want to see some interesting city council meetings, I encourage you to tune in. I see Byron Champlin as counselors on this call, so he can attest to it's almost a comedy routine at times, but the city council's used it, the zoning board has used this, the planning board has, our development team. We're all using this to stay interactive with the community. We're also conducting building inspections of occupied structures via video as well. At the end of March, the city closed down the playgrounds and the skateboard park per the executive order of the governor. But as you all know, the parks remain open, and we've seen an increase in usage of the parks. We've specifically seen a huge uptick in heavy usage of our trail system. So with all that, the city administration acted very, very quickly, and I give the manager, Mr. Spell, and Brian LeBron and others a lot of credit because they acted quickly regarding the budgetary issues. The need was to offset the losses of revenues as a result of the stay-at-home order and the state of emergency. So first thing happened, we implemented a freeze on all spending. We initiated a hiring freeze of all positions except for police officers and dispatchers, which are always difficult to hire. We furloughed 63 employees across all departments throughout March and April. And so it was this quick action that the city took really, I think, is going to put us in a good position. But interestingly, I was fascinated when I would pick up some of the papers across the state, and I would read about Manchester or Nashua or Portsmouth, who they were implementing these freezes or hiring freezes. And we had already implemented them for 3 weeks prior to them even getting around to it. So it was a quick action I think is really going to be beneficial to us. When the coronavirus and pandemic first erupted, the city established a tracking project for accounting of all reimbursements. And this is going to be crucial, I think, to the health going forward. So, for instance, there are several pots of buckets, if you will, where money can be found or for reimbursed. And one of them is through FEMA. Second is with our fire department and the allocations for our Medicare and Medicaid and the reimbursements we get for transports. I'm proud of the fact that the police department has actually already seen over $74,000, and our fire department has done a great job with over $117,000 in grants from the Department of Justice for equipment and overtime. The city has also been successful in accessing federal funds for our airport. There's $30,000 there. This is through the CARES Act, and the important thing to note is there's no match or no payback requirement. And it can be used for any general operating expense or to pay debt service. Now, many of you are probably very, very familiar with GOFER, which is the governor's committee to look at how we are going to disperse, the state will disperse the CARES Act money. And I can tell you that the governor has been great to work with from my perspective. He has reached out once a week. He talks to all at least once a week, he talks to all the mayors across the state. The manager has also participated in those calls. And one of the things that I stressed to him and asked is that we really need to see reimbursements come this fiscal year and not wait till next. So one of the governor's orders, or one of the initiatives, is he made $40 million available for cities and towns. And you probably remember reading a headline that said, Concord gets $1 million. Well, that's not quite accurate. The city's allocation is $1 million, and that is for the purpose of reimbursement. So we have to actually submit those expense reports to get the reimbursements. But yes, it's eligible up to $1 million. Just as a side note, I think it's fascinating. Some of you may recall that in 2017, the city actually put in place and adopted a hazardous mitigation plan. And what that did was address all types of hazards, including pandemics. So at that time, the plan was approved by the New Hampshire Department of Safety, Homeland Security, as well as FEMA Region 1. And the fact that we were able to respond as quickly as we did, and our public safety, our fire department, police department, the reason we were so far in advance, I think, and a lot of others, is because we really had done our homework and we had prepared for this moment. So you hope it never happens, but we were truly prepared. So some of the other things I just want to also give a quick shout out to the Concord Chamber of Commerce, as well as In Town. They were great partners in working with us and doing surveys and including for business resources. So I just want to say thank you to them. So as I indicated earlier, the doors of City Hall, they're closed, but I want you to know the city is carrying on and it's been very, very busy. So just to give you a flavor, and I'm not going to take you through everything, but I want to give you an idea of some of the things as we continue to carry on. General Services, for instance, continues to manage our paving program. And I was really pleased to see the council. We have tried to maximize as many dollars as we could to pave as much as we could. And in fact, in March, we approved as a council the paving of Bog Road. So if you haven't been on Bog Road lately, I encourage you to do so because it is a smooth ride. It is much different than before. We continue with the bag leaf collection. We started that on April 20th. Our golf course opened on May 11th in accordance with all the Governor's Stay-at-Home Order 2.0. We continue to work on our parking garages, doing pressure washing and cleaning of the road salts so we can extend the life as long as we can for those garages. In fact, the School Street Garage renovation project continues and is scheduled to actually be completed in August. So for some of you who work downtown and park there, I think you'll be much relieved. The city has continued to perform inspections and issue permits. And in fact, we've worked with each restaurant in the city who are interested in doing outdoor dining. If you can picture this, myself, Matt Walsh, Carlos Bahia, our health inspector, Gwen, we started down by Whiskey and Wine, and we worked all the way south, stopping in front of each restaurant, working with the owners to figure out how we could maximize their space so they could get as much as they could for outdoor dining, so if they so chose. The clerk's office, for instance, they are working with the Secretary of State's office on the election issues to ensure a safe and open election process for this fall. I can tell you that I personally have been in contact with the governor's office and Secretary of State's because as June comes around, June 2nd is the deadline for changing your party affiliation. And we were able to, the governor issued an emergency order dealing with how people could do that, as well as on June 3rd, that is the date in which you can sign up to run for election. And that's everywhere from the United States Senate all the way down to House races, if you will. Our Human Services Department's actually had huge impacts, coronavirus. We have had a significant increase in our workload at our Human Services Department, and with that increased workload comes the possible increase of costs. We have had increase in requests for homeless, and at the same time, we've seen a decrease in our housing options. The shelters, for instance, were mandated to compress, and they're not taking any new clients. And several of our hotels, as you know, have closed. We've also seen an increase in our food requests due to food insecurities. And one of the things that we need to pay attention to is once the eviction foreclosure and the utility moratorium ends, I think that we all recognize there's probably going to be an increase in our requests at our Human Service Department. So that my fear is, that we're going to see a large rent and utility arrears at that point, and we're going to have to pay close attention to that. Our police and our fire department, they've had to actually change the way they perform a lot of their jobs. Overall, our police calls are down significantly, approximately 50%, and since the pandemic. But unfortunately, our domestic violence calls are up between 25 to 26% during this time frame. And our fire department has been extremely busy working closely with Concord Hospital and other organizations, including the Capital Area Public Health Network, other long-term care facilities. Many people don't recognize this, but we actually have a close relationship with the New Hampshire State Men's and Women's Prisons. And I was very proud of the fact that we also worked with our community college, NHTI, to help them stand up the alternate care site. Hopefully we'll never have to use that, but we participated in that as well. Things like traffic accidents are down during this time frame, but we're still seeing our substance abuse issues and our concerns for our mental health related issues and the long-term impacts they're going to have. They just have not gone away. So the homeless concerns not only around our human services department, but also in terms of police and fire. About the camps and public health. We have worked closely with the resource center, and they've been a great resource to work with and trying to make sure we address those needs of our homeless. I also want to point out that we have been, I believe, a really good partner with the state. For instance, our Deputy Chief, Aaron McIntyre, was lent out to the Department of Health and Human Services in a role of director of the Metropolitan Medical Response System. That is responsible for the oversight of the alternate care sites and the overseeing of the COVID-19 testing. And so I think that's important to recognize that when they came and asked they needed help, we were there for them. I'd also point out that we are fully reimbursed for any and all costs that there are for Deputy Chief McIntyre going to work for the state. So I could go on and on about all the things that are going on. I think you get the impression and hopefully how busy we actually are carrying on our duties. There is one decision that I want to single out, and that is the suspension of the pay-as-you-throw program. In an effort to be responsive to the concerns that councilors were all hearing regarding the cost and the access to the bags, our favorite purple bags, the council took a vote. Actually, the vote was 14-1, and at that time to suspend the program. So if you remember back, the council, we strongly recommend and encourage to continue to use purple bags if you could, and to continue to recycle when possible. And at the time, we were very clear as a council saying that there was going to be an increased cost to the taxpayer when we made that decision. So it shows you that, I can't get them all right here. Boy, was there was an increase. There was a pent-up demand. Who knows that, when you're telling people to stay home and all of a sudden they start cleaning out their basements and their attics and their closets. We've seen an increase, that's for sure. So to put in perspective for you, the city currently pays about $64.15 per ton for municipal solid waste disposal. And it looks like the increase is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 45 tons per week. So when we talked about the increased costs, let me just say that 45 tons represents about, in disposal costs, that represents about $3,000 additional per week. And then when you put a lot more trash out there, they need extra crews to out there and pick it up. So there's a cost of personnel, and that's about $6,750 per week. So you're looking at about $10,000 per week for the suspension of the Purple Bag program. And I think we're about 6 weeks into it now. So I would strongly encourage, once again, please, if you can, use purple bags, and please recycle when possible. And I would also encourage you to compost food waste if you can. If you have access to a compost bin, I strongly recommend that. The other thing I want to mention about solid waste is that we have a program called the Blue Bag Program. And as more and more people are out walking, trying to get exercise, as we're all stuck at home, we've had people pick up these purple bags, and along their walks, they're picking up litter along our roads. And we've actually picked up about 4 tons of litter through the Purple Bag Program, which I think that's outstanding. So what does the future look like for the next several months? The city will continue with starting with an opening plan for our city buildings and facilities. And it's a program an opening that will protect, I think, the safety of the public as well as our staff. It's going to include things like increased sanitization and, of course, use of our personal protective equipment, which we all like to talk about our PPEs now. The online resources for customer service will continue, and they'll be supported and encouraged to do that. In-person services are still probably be restricted, but possibly by appointment, we'll be able to accommodate people's needs and use physical separations. We're looking to have curbside services at the library. We continue to use social distancing standards for their city construction projects. I can tell you that I'm acutely aware of this one. The building in which my office is located, we had a backup with the sewer in the basement, and the city informed me that no, they weren't going in the building. They work from the street and they keep their distance. So I experienced that personally. And of course, our meetings will largely continue along the virtual and electronic ways. So overall, when considering today's circumstances, we are still busy, and in the current budget for FY 2020 should be pretty much on target due to the early action and expenditure constraints imposed by the city. So, as I talk to the other mayors around the state and where they are in other municipalities, I think Concord is in a much better position than many of those around us. Really, a great deal of credit goes to our city administration and employees who have done a great job at seeking those reimbursements and controlling the spending. So, please note that along with the COVID-19 crisis, I haven't actually mentioned, some of the other things that we've always been dealing with, and that is the toll of the mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and you can't forget things like dealing with PFOA issues. I mean, there are a lot of things going on besides COVID-19. So with that, let me tell you what's keeping me up at night. It is the fiscal year 2021 budget, which begins on July 1st. The city charter requires the manager to present his proposed budget to the council 45 days prior to the end of the current fiscal year. So last Friday, the manager delivered his budget to the council. And on Monday of this week, the finance committee, which is basically the city council as a whole, listened to his overview. And the first, I am very pleased to say that the manager's proposed FY 2021 budget has a 0% increase on the tax rate compared to last year, which came in at about 1.62%. And if you include all the capital improvement projects with the operating budget for FY 20 that was adopted, it was about $109.2 million. Now, the proposed FY 21 proposed budget is $106.5 million. So the managers come in with about a year-to-year decrease of about $2.7 million, which is, I think, outstanding. So how did the manager put this together with all the possible unknowns during this unprecedented situation? So the budget he put together relies on several things. I'm not going to touch upon them all, but just give you an idea. The first, he used $1.5 million in undesignated fund balance. And I should also point out this time that this is actually the first time in 12 years that a balanced budget will not be achieved. So undesignated fund balance, just for people, it represents the portion of the total fund balance that is spendable, not restricted for anything, or has been committed or assigned for any specific purpose. So for easy way of thinking about it, it's like a savings account or a rainy day fund, if you will. And we were able to actually achieve a really healthy fund balance through excellent financial management practices. And our city goal actually as a council was 18.5%. We actually had a 19% fund balance. And in fact, the bond rating agency looks at that to measure your financial health. And Standards & Poor's reaffirmed the rating at the beginning of this year for the city at a AA+, which is outstanding. The manager also suggesting using about $300,000 in managed attrition. He is suggesting 67.4% reduction in new operational expenses compared to the last fiscal year. And he is also reducing by $1.4 million the general fund appropriation for our capital budget program. So I think you'll see a few less things in our capital budget. Also noteworthy, the water fund, he's proposing a 0% rate tax increase, or 0 rate increase. The wastewater fund, on the other hand, he is asking for 8.25% increase. And after I got off the floor from reading that, you have to ask yourself, why? How is this happening? And I want people to think about this because there are when people talk about state downshifting, state impacts and changes in laws, this is a direct impact of the state changes that they made to the new PFOA standards. Now, we all want and enjoy clean water. I think that's obviously we're all supportive of that. But there are financial implications to it. And for the city, it means an absorption of a $770,000 expenditure for sludge disposal. So I want you to think about it. We were actually bringing in a revenue source of a little over $300,000 for treating other community sludge down at our wastewater treatment plant on Hall Street. Now we've lost that revenue source, and we are now having to pay for the disposal of our sludge. And we recently signed a contract where we're shipping it actually to Canada, believe it or not, but that's a $770,000 expenditure we have to now absorb. So that's why he's asking for that rate increase. I'll also add that the solid waste, there's no increase to the rates of the purple bags being proposed. So I am extremely confident that we can control our expenditure side. I have no worries about that. But what I'm very concerned about is regarding revenues. There are just so many variables that we could guess wrong, and if we get them all right, all but one, it could have a significant effect on our overall budget. And here, just giving a flavor, here are some of our revenue sources that we're going to have to really monitor closely. The first is Fuels and meals tax. We're budgeting about $2.1 million, and that's been a flat number since 2017. Our highway block grant funds, we've budgeted a little over $900,000. And of course, that money is really tied to the gas tax and tolls. And if we haven't been traveling as much, and if the state hasn't been bringing as much in the gas tax and tolls, then we potentially see the effect of that locally. Motor vehicle registrations, which is our second biggest revenue source, we're budgeting about $7 million. And that's the lowest that we've budgeted since 2017. Our investment income, for instance, just to give you an idea of kind of the range, in 2019, we brought in approximately $896,000 in interest income. But in 2021, this next fiscal year, we are hoping for $390,000. That's the effect. And of course, the big one, which I really want to focus on a little bit more, is our property tax collections. We are anticipated with this budget to raise about $42 million through our property taxes. And to put that in perspective, we have is being proposed a $68.4 million operating budget. So people oftentimes think that all your operating budget is really paid for by property taxes. And in fact, it's about 62% of the property taxes that cover that full operating budget. The rest is covered by some of those other things that I just went through, the highway block grants, the motor vehicle registrations, interest income, those kind of things. But in this case, I'm really concerned about our collection of property taxes. What potential is the lagging of those tax payments. And if we see a lag in those tax payments, it is a cause for concern around cash flow issues. And those future months are going to depend a degree of how we do with delinquencies. So to give you a reference, in April, at the last tax payment, about 92% of the taxpayers paid on time. And that's about, so only 1% off of what it was the year prior. But the question is, what was it going to be like on July 1st? What's it going to be like on October 1st? What's it going to be like on January 1st of next year? So if to think about this, if the city only brings in 60, 70, 80% of those property tax payments, we are still responsible and obligated to pay the Concord School District, the Merrimack Valley School District, 100% of what they have asked to be raised in taxes. The county is also, when you pay your tax bill, there's a portion there, and we make a payment to the county once a year in December, and our share of that is $12 million. So we pay the Concord School District every 2 weeks, we pay the Merrimack Valley School District once a month, and we pay the county once a year. I also have questions and concerns on abatements of the interest and the penalties and what we're going to see along those lines. So that's just some of the revenues and that I think really keep us up at night. And I would encourage you all to go on the city website. The proposed city budget is there. The manager's transmittal letter is there. You can review that. You can review all the revenues, expenditures of every department. And it also sets out a schedule, which I encourage you, if you want to tune in to one of our Zoom meetings, you can. There's going to be there's going to be 2 opportunities for public testimony on anything you want to see in the budget or don't want to see in the budget. But I encourage you all to pay close attention, because at the beginning of June or middle of June, the council is going to spend a lot of time putting this together. Probably one of the biggest differences you're going to see around the budget is we're going to do the best we can adopting a budget. And we're going to have to come back, I believe, after we see what happens in July with those tax payments, we're going to probably come back in October to see what happens with those tax payments and to make adjustments as necessary. Ideally, if people are able to make their payments, we can look at the capital budget and what needs to be done. And unfortunately, if the tax payments don't come in, then we're going to have to look at things like tax anticipation notes and what that means to keep our cash flow going. So before I'll stop there about that budget, and I just wanted to give you all just a few of the fun facts that when you go to those parties, when we eventually can all go back and be social again, that you can have at your fingertips. So what on earth do city taxes pay for? Because we raise about the 42 million or so that are collected in your tax payments. 31% goes to fire, 30% goes to police, 22% goes to general services, take care of roads and such, and 17% goes to debt service. And our property tax rate is being proposed with the 0%. Concord's rate is $27.78, and if you live in Pennacook, it's $34.10. Now, when you look at the two different rates, the city rate of $9.77 is the same no matter where you live, and of course, the county rate is $2.70, and that's the same no matter where you live. But if you live in the Concord School District, it's $15.31. And if you live in the Merrimack Valley School District, it's $21.63. So there is a difference there. But also, I think it's important to point out to people that 26% of the property tax value in Concord is tax exempt. And when you compare that to the next closest community, which is Manchester, they have only 14%, which is tax exempt. So as Concord, we shoulder a significant burden, and of course the rest of us pick up those costs. One of the things that I thought would be interesting to remind you is that when we talk about increases in rates and how much the budget increases or decreases, 1%, this is a good one to remember, 1% tax rate increase equals $427,620. So 1% is a little over $420,000 when you think about that. When you look about some of our expenses and how they break down in the city, when we talk about function of government, for instance, 41% of our expenses go to public safety, which is police and fire. 31% is your general government. You can think a lot of things in City Hall along those lines. General service makes up 15% of the expenses. And then things like park and recs, library, community development, health and services really makes up the rest. But when you look at it by category, I think this is important. The city is no different than a lot of businesses in that 72% of our expenses are really compensation and benefits. So we are clearly, we don't make anything. We are service oriented, and that service means people. So a few other little facts before I'll stop and try to answer some questions. Last year, we did about $4 million in paving, and it was a very successful year in paving. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is that we got additional money through good financial management and a city surplus. We also saw a state influx of about $749,000 through the state budget. And thank the governor, I thank the legislature. It's great having a Speaker of the House be a former counselor, Steve Shirliffe. And so that's, I really appreciate that. He always takes good care of the city. But we were able to do a whole lot more paving last year. This year, we're anticipating spending about $2.2 million on paving. So we're going to stay with the program and do the best we can. We have about 220 miles of roads in the city that we're responsible for, and about 120 miles of sidewalks that we have to deal with. I talked about how busy the trails were. We have over 80 miles of trails in the city. I talked about how busy our police and fire were and how they rethink the way they deliver services. But just think about this. In 2019, they responded to over 56,000 calls for service. We have a very busy police and fire department. A library, we have over 300,000 items in circulation. And when we go through this budget, it's not only the things that we have to deliver, it's also the quality of life things. And I'm proud to say we have over 230 acres of parks in the city. So that's just some of the little tidbits I'll leave you with. Clearly, we are open for business at the city. We've been very busy, and I am very proud of the proactive response that the city administration, the council, and our staff has done. So I think it'll put us in a much better position for moving forward. So with that, I would be glad to answer any questions I possibly can.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And we do have a number of questions that have come in, and I'll remind those others that are on this call that if you would like to add a question, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can type in the question and we'll receive it over here. So I'll just start going through these. And the first question has to do with the library, which you kind of an interesting segue, but this is more of a statement. The library is able to accept application for member cards, but the form is available online, but the applications are not being accepted. So I think that's just by way of information. I don't know if there's any need to comment on that, but
I appreciate. I will share this though. One of the things that city's councilors, we try to be as responsive to constituents as we can. And we really rely on you sharing these experiences so that we can make better decisions and work with the city administration. But when you see things like this, there is if you go to the city website, there's an opportunity where you can actually state an issue or a problem you might have. And typically, we have about a 24-hour response time to getting back to you when you point things out to folks. So I would encourage you, if you ever see that, either let a counselor know or myself, and or you can go on the city website and report those things.
We have a question, an anonymous question, someone asking if the city has a position on mail-in voting.
Well, that's really driven by, I think, the state. And as you know, the Secretary of State's office appointed a commission. They're reviewing all these things right now. I will tell you from just firsthand knowledge that, well, let me say it this way. I learned a lesson that happy city clerk makes for a happy city council. And, you know, our clerk it takes great pride in our elections. And we are anxious to receive, I think, those instructions from the Secretary of State's office, from the AG's office, to let us know how we're going to approach those things. Because there are very practical issues that come with the elections and voting. For instance, you know, what are we going to use for voting booths, how distant they need to be from one another, and right down to what do you do with the pencil that you want it to go in there? Obviously, it's going to be really important in how we deal with absentee voting, absentee ballots, and being able to get that information out to people as fast as possible. So there are a lot of issues surrounded it, and I hope people really stay tuned.
Next question here. Can the health department mandate mask wearing for food service, or do they?
So this is a great question in terms of mandate of masks. The town of Salem actually brought forth a potential ordinance change to make mask wearing mandatory for everyone. They eventually never took a vote, is my understanding. But the governor said, one of his press conferences, I believe, well, gee, we'll just leave that up to cities and towns. Well, in conferring with our city solicitor, the community actually doesn't have the authority to go forth and require this for everyone because of a preemption issue. But in terms of the food service and such, I will just tell you anecdotally a personal story, and I'll also share with you this. The governor's guidelines for opening the outdoor service have been very clear. If you've actually been around town and seen some of the outdoor service that's already begun, I think the wait staff and the servers and the personnel within the restaurants have been very good about wearing the mask and being in compliance with those guidelines. But, you know, I wear my mask. I encourage everyone to wear theirs. I don't do it only for myself. I do it for others who I'm coming in contact with. So I strongly recommend you do. And I've tried to support our businesses in terms of eating out. You can probably tell I don't miss many meals. But I made some decisions when I saw that some of the food establishments weren't wearing masks. I decided not to give them my business. I go elsewhere where they do. And, you know, hopefully they're going to start as well. So hopefully that it's one of those things where I strongly recommend you do.
So another question here, will there be a hazardous waste day this year?
Great question. Typically, the Hazardous Waste Day, I believe, is in the fall. I am hopeful that we will be able to continue with our Household Hazardous Waste Day. It's been very successful. So unless I hear otherwise, I believe we'll be able to move forward with that.
Okay. I've got one there. Question here. Are there additional city guidelines or requirements for restaurants, retail stores, and museums located in Concord in addition to state guidelines and requirements? Or is Concord basically following the state guideline protocols?
It's my understanding, we're in talking to our health department and code, that we're really following the state guidelines for all these establishments, these retail restaurants and such. And we are monitoring it and we are enforcing it.
Okay. So Gene Jaroskus wants to know if Byron Champlin wears a bow tie to city council Zoom meetings, or has he abandoned that tie in the face of the pandemic?
I want you to know, no matter what Councilor Champlin wears, he is the best looking councilor we have, bow tie or none.
Okay. Here's a question. Why do seniors have to continue to pay property taxes toward the county's schools when we have no children in education system? There's one for you, Mayor.
Well, look, I think you measure the health of a community, the health of a society. One of the most important things is a well-educated community. And if you want to continue to expand our tax base so you can control the taxes in the community, we have to be able to bring in businesses. And we have to, and one of the things that businesses look to is really having a strong educational system within the community. So I understand the question. It's not something I haven't heard before many, many times, but I think it's the value that we place in the importance of education, public education, and I think we truly all benefit the community. And it really is. I would make a strong argument that a healthy education system really adds to our strong economic development successes in your community.
So I want to throw a question out of my own. Recently, there was an incident at Rollins, I think it was at Rollins Park, where there were some folks that were violating a rule to stay off of the playground for safety purposes and to avoid infection. The police, in my opinion, handled that incredibly professionally and calmly. So it was I think kudos to the police department. Is there protocols in place or policies in place dealing with folks that, we've been seeing issues at the State House with gatherings of people. Things have been handled very calmly. Is there some sort of a policy in place dealing with that, or is this just the way the police department operates and how they're dealing with these issues?
Well, I believe strongly that our police department is by far one of the best in the state. And we are very fortunate to hire some incredibly professional individuals. They feel like they keep getting younger to me, but we are fortunate to have an excellent police department. These challenges where the governor said it on one of his calls the other day. He said, look, you've got 25% of the people who just believe this is an absolute hoax, it's not real, it doesn't exist, and we should, reopen everything immediately and go back to the way things were. He said, you got 25% of the people on the other end of the spectrum who don't leave their house and are locked down and just really scared for their health and such. But you got about 50% of us who are kind of in the middle, just trying to figure out the right thing to do and to make sure we stay safe, our family stays safe, keep one another safe, but yet continue to function in as normal way as we possibly can. And it's that's 25% that we're seeing at the State House who are showing up and protesting. And I don't know anybody who doesn't want to get back to a sense of normalcy. They want to reopen things the best they can. But we have to be smart. We have to listen to the science. We have to follow the data and do it in a safe manner. And I think that The governor has been listening to those professionals and doing it in a very methodical, thoughtful way. So I think our police department, when dealing with these individuals, have done it in an extremely responsible way, professional way, as you pointed out. But I will admit, I'm extremely frustrated by the who are doing this. There's no reason you need to be taking it out on the police who simply carrying out what they're responsible to do. And you can make a point in a lot of other safer ways than pretending you're coughing on our police department. I can't say enough positive about how well they handled that situation.
I will second that for sure. I think we've got a terrific police department here in Concord. We touched on this a little bit earlier about city pools. I think it's unclear right now whether or not they will open, depending on a number of different issues. But could you talk about that? And if the pools don't open, are there any significant savings there?
I'll confess I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I can tell you that the manager did actually appropriate money to open the pools this year. But there are some real logistical issues around pools. One, we're going to be waiting for guidance from the state as to whether they can actually open at all. Two, I think there's a problem with, are we actually going to be able to hire lifeguards to fill those positions this year? Three, and keep in mind that many of our lifeguards, they go back to school or they play on sport teams. So, we're always stuck at the end of the year trying to keep as many pools as we can open because we lose the personnel. But the other part of it is, I think that it's going to be really practical in the sense, you say the pool can accommodate 100 swimmers, and let's say the guidelines come down and say you can only have 20 people inside the fence swimming at a time. It's 95 degrees, and you're going to have 80 parents with their kids, outside looking to get in. And you put a 16, 17, 18-year-old young adults in charge of trying to manage all that. I think it's going to be very difficult. So we're going to be watching it closely. It's not just the money. It's going to be the health and safety of our community and of the folks that are working there. But the pools are going to be, and that along with that is the summer camps. We're going to do the best we can to run as many as we can. The Parks and Recs department here in the city has been an active participant in the governor's reopening commission in talking about what we can and can't do for guidelines. So I think time's going to tell with that one.
Okay. Next question here. Does the city have a rainy day fund?
So the rainy day fund is more or less what I talked about, that undesignated fund balance. And that's one of the things I talked about, the managers using about $1.5 million of that rainy day fund to help alleviate pressure on our city taxpayers.
So we just received an answer to Hazardous Waste Day. Byron wrote in that it's scheduled, at least at this point, for September 19th. So that's a little bit more information for the person who asked that question. We've got another one regarding masks. Building on the mask question, is the city health department or any health department monitoring restaurants for mask compliance?
Yes, our code department within the community development department, code division within the community development department, and our health inspector are monitoring those things.
Okay.
And I have to give a big shout out to Gwen. She had big shoes to fill in following Jean Blake, but she's done an excellent job. And I think that if you listen to the owners of the restaurants and other folks who deal with her, she's been nothing but a professional. We're lucky to have her.
Okay, another question here. Can you comment on progress and developments to attract more downtown residential housing? And the comment along with this, the last year seems to have brought more folks living downtown. Will that grow in the months and years to come?
So I can tell you by way of this. When I started off my remarks today, I talked about how I was I saw the opportunity coming. And, we were talking about employment security. We were talking about all these other projects. And part of that was the hope to bring downtown more housing, market rate, affordable housing. And things have really changed. And I think that we're going to have to, it's going to be a bit of a wait and see to see how fast we come out of this and how well we come out of this. But the housing market still seems to be fairly hot. In fact, I know one individual just sold their home and they got more than their asking price. So things still seem to be moving. I think that the feedback I've gotten is that the downtown housing stock continues to be very popular because the investments that the community that you made as a community together with the city council have been paying off dividends, and I think they'll continue to pay off those dividends.
I'm just going to add a little commentary there to the people on this call. Last Saturday, there was a nice weather day, came downtown, the farmer's market was going. And for the first time in about 2 months, it really felt almost like normal downtown. There were a lot of people out walking. There were cars parked on the street. There was activity going on. Retail stores were back open again. And I'm just encouraging folks to, in a very safe way, get out there and support the downtown businesses because, you know, we made a huge investment as a community to improve our downtown. And there are some folks that are in rough shape right now, weathering this economic storm. So to the extent that you can go down there and support them, I would really hope that you would. Talking of downtown, we have a question. Any thoughts to suspending parking fees to help stimulate downtown business recovery?
Well, I can tell you, we actually, the parking committee took up this issue, and you know, the theory was, for all the things that you said, we want people to come down and we want people to be supportive of these businesses, the small businesses in our community, that when we come out of this on the other side, we want a healthy economy, and we need those folks to survive and to thrive. So the parking committee really strongly encouraged the parking division to unilaterally suspend to ease up on some of the parking fines and meters and such. And I think they have been. I think they have been much more sensitive. There's a balance to that because, you know, I've also heard complaints from occasionally from a retailer when a person parks in front of his or her store all day long. You know, they want the turnover. They want people to be able to come and go. So, you know, we constantly strive for that balance. But the fact is that not a lot of people have been downtown recently. So I think we really kind of tried to lighten up on those tickets. But as it gets more popular and as people start coming back, I think we're going to have to find that balance again.
Okay. Just a question of curiosity. I mean, you initiated an effort to expand some of the seating for downtown restaurants, Mayor. And if folks notice on the street, in front of some of the restaurants, tables have been put out into the parking spaces, which I think is really good. I think it's attracting more people downtown. Has there been any discussion relative to giving any of the retailers an opportunity to come out onto the street and expand, you know, just to draw in more business from that perspective?
No, that's a question, and thank you for giving me the credit, but the credit goes to a lot of other folks. You included. I mean, you brought all the restaurants owners together through a Zoom call, and we were able to talk about what they envisioned and how they could actually make this work. So I appreciate your efforts around that as well. But you're right, in terms of the retail, I think we're working with them as well. One of the conditions with the restaurants and bring them out front was they needed to go talk to their neighbors to make sure if they were neighbors with a retailer, that the retailer had enough space for their things that they need to put outside. So I think the city is pretty flexible when it comes to that. And I think it's, you know, partially this is just all new to all of us, and we're going to figure it out as we go along.
Well, the final question I have here is there any plan to open the bathrooms downtown behind Margaritas, public restrooms?
So the bathrooms were, for lack of another term, destroyed. The city reinvested and improved all those bathrooms downtown. And the answer is yes, they will be reopened. But they are brand new because they were destroyed. And I am hoping and I am strongly encouraging that we treat them as if they were your own. But I will say that one of the challenges we are trying to figure out is when we open those, how do we make sure we keep them sanitized for all the Corona 19 issues. So in terms of the sanitation, so it's not just as simple as unlocking the door. There's going to be some logistics about how that happens.
I have one final question, and it's my own. You had talked about the blue bag program, which I think is really terrific. Where do people get those blue bags?
I believe they can actually get those at General Services, and you can just call over, and I'm sure that they can meet you outside or leave them outside, or make arrangements for how you can get them. But I would call General Services.
I was very impressed by the amount of bags that were collected. He said quite a bit, like over 4 tons, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Okay, Emily, if you want to put the final screen up there, that concludes the Q&A. And one thing that I wanted to, there we go. Thank you. I want to thank the mayor for giving us this time today. That was a very informative discussion, informative presentation. I picked up a lot of information, and I'm sure everyone else on the call did as well. I want to thank our sponsor again, Charter Trust, for their generosity in supporting this program. And I also want to bring to everyone's attention just a couple of things. The Leadership Greater Concord class of 2021, we're now accepting applications for that. That class will start in September, but the selection process begins now, and I think the deadline to submit an application is June 19th. So you can just go give the chamber a call or go to our website. You can pick up an application there. It's a great program, and I would highly recommend it. We've been running it for 27 years. And also, at some point, we will be holding the Pinnacle Awards again, recognizing small business, business of the year, nonprofit, and business leader of the year. We're accepting nominations for that right now. It's a very popular event, so if you would like to nominate someone for one of these categories, we would love to see those nominations. So again, thank you, Mayor Boulay. Thank you, Charter Trust, and thank you everyone who is on this call. And we look forward to having you back at our next webinar, which will be next week.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.